What's up, everybody? Happy Hump Day. Oh man, it's steamy, humid, beautiful. I'm going for a night ride. I just got back hanging out at the Santa Fe Slip there by the Damon Silos. Beautiful spot. Getting warmer as you hear it happening all around. It's non-stop. I've lived in this neighborhood 25 years. I've never heard that many sirens. If we were lucky, you heard a siren once a month. You know, it's for an ambulance. Maybe we had a gang thing happen. Maybe. But not every day. I hear sirens every day now in my neighborhood. Like I said, I've lived in the same building, same address, 25 years. You can look me up. I ain't scared of where I live and who I am. And if people know my phone number, emails. I mean, I grew up with the phone book. You kind of get it? How I grew up, everybody knew your name, your number, your address, and your phone number. And people, and this I'm going to be honest, people who hid their addresses, phone numbers, and where they live, they were people you didn't talk to. So remember that. People who hide their addresses and their phone numbers are people that I was taught not to hang with, because that was strange, because you can't track them then. People talk about doxing or something. No. If you're a public figure, if you're a regular person, what do you got to hide? If you're not ripping people off, if you're not a scoundrel, a gentrifier, a schemer, a scammer, shyster, swindler. Oh man, look at those two guys, right? Look at those two guys. Beautiful, see that? Those are nice. I'll leave you guys alone. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to do that. Those look pretty nice. Look like, I think that's husband and wife. They're having kids. So, that's what I was taught. And what I've noticed is a lot of these people that are coming into our city, and I'm dealing with a couple of them now, who say, I don't want my address certain places, I don't want people to know what my phone number is. They're basically out-of-towners, and I'm starting to have a big suspicion. I'm not going to say it, but they're the gentrifiers. They're the ones who want to take advantage of their city. They're coming from other places they can't afford or they've ruined. Yes, they've ruined it. Yeah. If you're leaving a place, you're running away. Stay in the place and fix it. That's my philosophy. If you don't like something, leave, move out. But don't take advantage of the new place. Like a parasite almost, you know what I mean? So, let's get to my idea of gentrification. It started with Ron bringing all those movie stars with his brother, Ari. Cinescape. You know, there's two of those places in. Whoa. Hey, how you doing, brother? There's two of those places. There's one on Western, and they taken up like a 5 or so block area, square block. They've taken over streets and everything. So that's one place. And there's another place they've quietly taken over that you don't know about, is by 31st and Kedzie, the old Washburn Trade School area. There's supposed to be some clinic there and everything. And they're buying up land along the river too. That's another thing that you can see. A lot of the river properties are being brought up. If you look at the salt shed, if you took where was I just at? Oh, it just escapes me. I was just on Cermak. A lot of these places are catering to young urbanites. Right? Or they want to be urbanites and they want to get this urban experience. So they come here to go to shows. They come here to experience the city, the roughness, the grittiness. You know, that stuff that makes New York, Chicago, Miami, right? Dallas, LA, right? I mean, we're big cities, right? So what they're doing is creating these safe spaces, these promoters, developers, like Lincoln Yards, the 78, and what they're doing is charging good money to come into a safe space, listen to some music, some shows, drink, get high, whatever it is, and experience it. There ain't nothing wrong with it. It's America. Look, I'm never against making money. And at a certain point, gentrification is actually good. There's nothing wrong with gentrification. The problem is the intent. And this is where I'm getting to. We're already, I don't know how far we are here in Chicago. The big economy, the macro economy, we're about, I would say, a third of the way through it, I'm thinking. So the last big wipeout we had was what? Started in the late 1890s and went all the way past the war into the 50s. So that's lasted about close to 60 years. So everybody knows that. The Great Depression, that wasn't a one-off. That was actually connected to the First World War, and it was connected to Industrial Revolution and wealth exchange. It's a misnomer if you think any other way. You know what I mean? What's up, my brother?
What's going on, sir?
Be safe, my brother. And there's my light. So this misnomer, oh, there's a nice bunny rabbit. See him over there? So we've seen bunnies and ducks already. So this misnomer that the Depression happened in the late 20s and in 30s, no, that was wealth transfer. That was the old European Guard, Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was part of the British, right? Taking it away from the old school monarchies and taking the wealth from them. That's what it was about. If you read economics with history and all of that, you learn that. You know what I mean? What's up, my brother?
What's up, man?
And so don't get that confused. The whole Great Depression and all that, and that lasted a long time because it was artisans and small shops. Everything got industrialized. It started in England and France. We perfected it here in America through Ford and and the scientific method, right? Taylorism. And it got perfected in America. Why? Because there was new people here. There was fresh people. They left all those societies where there was East or West. They came to America, and they basically gentrified America, right? There was natives here. There was plantation owners. There was small shops, artisans, crafts. People wanted to get away from religious persecution. So they came here for freedom, and the capitalists said, hey, this is the spot, and let's try this out, because Europe is old. Asia, we got too much trouble in Asia. Europe, those guys are too smart, and they're too revolutionary, so let's try something here in America. And that's where we got the Industrial Revolution, all that fancy stuff. And that's where it started. Actually, it started around the Civil War. We needed, in the North, we needed the cheap labor, the freed slaves. We needed those up here to work in our factories. Because there wasn't going to be... Hey, what's up, Kate? Hey. There wasn't going to be... Right? There can't be an industrialization without labor. And that's where I get to this idea of gentrification. Is we had to get those slaves free so they can come up north and work in our factories up here in the north. And if you talk about the Great Migration, blah, 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 you read about the stockyards who was used to break the backs of the organized labor, right? Because a lot of people came from Europe. They're already organized. They were socialists, anarchists, wobblies, all of that stuff. See, if you look at each little part, it's separate. But if you start looking at it as a whole on the macro level, you start to understand that. So let's get to fast forward, right? So that's my conceptualization. That's my theory. That's my postulate, right? Where I say that the Great Depression was one event across 60 to 70 years. And we're at that event today. We're at a change in wealth transfer and a change in technology. So we're in the same space, right? We're going to the AI revolution now, where everything's digital. The Industrial Revolution was mechanized, right? We went from agrarian to mechanized. Now we're going from mechanized to digital. That's where we're at. And that took about 60 to 70 years. But how it relates to Chicago. It relates to Chicago this way. I might sit here and have a drink. Look at these nice benches. Old timers. 100 years ago, these guys built a beautiful park here. Look at this stuff. At least you don't sit down, right? Look at this nice park here, right? Look at this beautiful stuff. Huh? You telling me these old capitalists were dumb? They were smart. And you gotta realize that. Just like now. So, what happened, I'm sitting down having a drink, all right? On these steps here. I got my little drink right there, see that? So what happened now is organized labor is very strong. And they're demanding lots of money. And it's unsustainable. Right? Prices are high, cost of living is high. It happens, gets capitalism, it just moves. Labor moves, but the capitalist moves. Moving to capital is easier than moving labor. And then when you move to capital, what happens? Labor follows. That's where migrations happen. Even the great migrations before money, what were they looking for? They were looking for goods, animals, climate, vegetation to eat, for sustenance. It's never going to change. Labor will always follow things that they need to protect themselves, to protect their families, and for substance. So, fast forward to Chicago. On the micro level, we have a governor, we have city people, county people. The first thing they say is these migrants from Venezuela need work permits. They don't say they need housing. They don't say they need immunization. They don't say they need they don't need English teaching. They don't say they need citizenship training. They don't say they need driver's license. They don't say any of that. They don't say they need background checks. And there's a story about that I'll talk later another day. They say they need to be allowed to work. They're the busters. They're the busters of labor now. They're the new great migrations, right? Where they're the cheap labor that are willing to do whatever and anything for a great day, right? For a great pay, great day, for their livelihoods. And if you look at what Ram did and bring all that fancy stuff from his brother Ari, right? He promoted Uber here. I mean, Uber got its start in Chicago. That's a $1 billion industry. It got its start here in Chicago because of Rahm Emanuel. He was the mayor. He allowed it, and therefore it transferred all over the world. And then what happened is he brought in other industries, and Lightfoot followed with the South-Southwest initiatives to go into deeply, I don't want to use the word that Demare uses, divested communities, but communities that were, it was just like white flight, except you could call it black flight. Black families, black middle-class families left in certain neighborhoods. Inglewood, right? North Lawndale, Austin. There might have been black families, white families, but you could call it black flight. And one of the reasons that it happened that way is just like it happened in the 80s. Introduction of drugs by the government, allowing crime to happen. Right? Basically liberal policies that promote criminality. Therefore, when you have criminality or disasters or crises, you can then come and say, look, we need to pass a certain law, we need to hire more cops, we need to suspend the rules. And that's where we're at. Last weekend, with the Mexican Independence Day, you can see They suspended the rules of a city, and they said you can't go to downtown Chicago. Everybody. I was a victim. Now we're getting to the point where the mayor is saying we need more money for the migrants, and they need to be allowed to work. I just talked to a bunch of people that are living over by Canal Port in 18th Street, African Americans, and the young lady I talked to, she was in her late 60s. She was really, really smart. And we're discussing what do we need? What do homeless Americans need? And basically the first thing they said is we need a place to stay. I said, what do they need? They need to build buildings, or we need to get you apartments? And this lady was really smart. And she goes, they tore down our places to live. They tore down our CHA. So what we're experiencing today is a manufactured crisis. Think about it. They tore down buildings. They were built in the 1950s and 60s. You can say good or bad. But there's castles in Europe that are over 3,000 years old. So these buildings that were built by the people from the war, they were built to institutional specs, were torn down, demolished, bulldozed, blown up with dynamite, whatever it took. And now what, 10, 15 years later, after the demolition, this city is saying, oh, we need more housing, we need more housing. Who tore down those buildings? Who tore those down? I'll tell you one person, Jadine Chow. Jadine Chow is head of security at CPS. Why don't you check her resume where she worked before that? She has no security experience, yet she's running the security for CPS. An institution that lost 100,000 students while she was the head of security. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to keep your kids into school. If you don't feel safe in the CHA, you're going to ask the city to tear them down. You kind of get the conceptualization of mine here. So, as we've torn down the projects, as the schools have been destroyed, naturally, people need places to live and feel safe. New York is expensive. California is super expensive, has lots of natural disasters. The Southwest has no water, right? There's no infrastructure there. One bad thing happens, it gets wiped out. Look what's happening in Vegas right now to the MGM. One ransomware is costing MGM, I don't know, $8 to $10 million a day in losses. That's because there's no infrastructure there. Everything is piped in. So if you figure out where the pipe is, you can cut the pipe off, or you can put a regulator in there. So these hackers figured out, we're going to throw some ransomware into their stuff, and there's nothing they can do because they only get one internet there. Maybe they need Starlink or something that's not connected to the wires, but you kind of get where I'm going to. In Chicago, we're the center of the United States. We have multiple means here. We have airports, we have trucks, we have railroads, we have boats. We have all kinds of means to get products here, ship products out. We have all kinds of means to communicate. Chicago at one time was the center of the media universe, the news media. So I guess what I'm getting into is Chicago, as it was the center, second city, is again becoming that place that's favorable to live. Problem is you got multi-generational families that want cheap rent, that want schools for their children, and they're kind of independent because that's what Chicago is. We're an independent city. Every nationality in our city has their own identity, own neighborhood. This self-segregation stuff that they say is bad, that's kind of silliness, right? Even the native tribes self-segregated. They didn't intermingle too much. That's why there was tribes. So let's not get confused with the neoliberal or the socialist revolutionary revisionism that the native tribes or the aboriginal tribes were peaceful and they integrate. No, they did not. They cut you up, they ate you, and put your heart on a table to sacrifice it to the gods. And they took your virgins, right? And that's what they did. That's how I get silly about that stuff. So, if we got all these people that are living in Chicago and love Chicago, they love the fresh water, they like the parks, they like the libraries, they like the streets, they like the lights. That's a gang sign, right? When they bend the signs like that. Right? They like their streets plowed. All of those good things we get in this city. Yeah, we have a little crime, we have a little bit of this. Then you need to do things to get rid of those people. You need to close their schools. You need to close their stores. You need to close their churches. You need to terrorize them. Tonight there was a robbery on 4300 West Chicago Avenue. A mechanic shop was robbed by 3 young people, black kids. And then, that gets polarized, blacks versus whites. No, the kids are allowed to steal because there's a mayor who says they're surviving or whatever. I don't know what his new thing is. He came up with a new term. They need to survive. It's like the Les Miserables, right? You need to get a piece of bread. Well, yeah, I don't know. Going and robbing a mechanic shop, terrorizing the workers there is not getting a piece of bread. That's just being an urban terrorist. But why are they allowed to do that? And why aren't there checks and balances in place so those young people understand that what they're doing is wrong? They get punished and there's consequences. And if they understand what they're doing is wrong, they can change their lives and start to contribute to the positive activities of our city. And that's going to be part 2 or 3 of my talk, right? Sorry, my thing got a little crooked there. I should have seen that. But there's a lot to unpack. Well, we are in the middle of gentrification here in Chicago. And the crime is going to get worse when the economy drops in the next year or 2. So it's going to get a lot worse. Taxes are going to go high. People aren't going to be able to live here. And there's going to be attacks on the working class. Gentrifiers are going to attack the working class. And people are going to try to be separated by separation politics, which the teachers union is part of building those narratives, right? Racism, classism, all of that stuff. In the end, we're all citizens and we all work together and live together. What my race is, my religion is, what I believe in, that has nothing to do with what I do with my neighbors, right? If I don't want to be with my neighbors, I don't have to be with them. And that's what makes our country great. That's all I have for Hump Day. I'm going to have to think about my other talks. But we are in the middle of gentrification. The mayor is a gentrifier. He gentrifies. He's from Elgin. He uses security details to ride to work and doesn't ride his bike back. So don't get confused by that guy. He's a gentrifier. So is the teachers union. If you look at their demographics, who's coming into the teachers union, who's coming into CPS, they're all gentrifiers. Most of them are buying these condos where the blacks and the browns used to live. They're going into Pilsen. They're going into North Lawndale, where now it's cleaned out. So I'll be writing some more articles on that. If you want some more statistics on how that works, I'll be publishing that. Hugs, kisses, and love. Have a great Hump Day. Make sure you get some rest, get some sleep. See you tomorrow. Bye. SubX.News on the spot.